Welcome back. What I want to do in this video today is make you a factory sealed game expert in under 10 minutes. On my videos, in my comments, I always see people saying, how can we be confident that the games are factory sealed? Surely it's really easy to create fake factory sealed games. So what I want to do in this video is show you the 3 most important things I look for on any factory sealed cardboard game. And my promise to you is that if you watch the entire 8 minutes and 1 second, you will be able to tell with about 90% accuracy on pictures alone if a game is authentic factory sealed. That is what I hope to achieve in this video. And everything I teach in this video is applicable across all cardboard Nintendo consoles. These are all consistent traits amongst them all. I have 5 games in front of me here. Some are factory sealed and some are not, so we can show different examples. With all that said, let's get into this. So the very first thing, when I see a factory sealed game, I am going to look for the vertical seam or horizontal seam seal existing on the box. Since Chrono Trigger is a Super Nintendo game, and when you put it upright, the seam on the back goes down vertically. This is called a V-seam. On NES games, it's commonly referred to as an H-seam because it creates the line across the back here. Let's just go over the standard seam pattern here that you're going to see on 90% of Nintendo games by starting with Chrono Trigger. And do keep in mind, this is for North American prints only. PAL will have its own rules, Japan will have its own rules. This is for North American prints of games only. So here is the top of the Chrono Trigger box. You can see the seam starts right here and goes all the way across the top of the box. Right here at the middle, you have the seam that goes down the back of the box and then completes the exact same pattern on the other side of the box. You see how it's not a perfect perpendicular line here. There's overlap, there's a little bit of a triangle forming right there. That is what you want to see in your seam. You do not want this to be a perfectly straight perpendicular line. Now, if it is a perfectly straight line, that does not inherently mean that it's fake. But it's the first thing you will notice where you're like, I need to look at this game closer. On the Madden 99 example, you can see here that the seam is even more exaggerated in how much it overlaps. You want to see some degree of overlapping or a small little triangle forming at this part where the seams meet. That's a very good sign. You can see on every single example I brought with me today, this seam pattern holds very steady. They all have that little puckering there where the seams meet. You always want to look for that on your H-seam seal. Now on the screen right now, I am going to put up a picture here of a fake factory sealed Minish Cap. And you can see when they tried to replicate the H-seam seal, the vertical seal on the game, they used a perfectly perpendicular line where the 2 seams meet. Like I said, this is your first red flag as to why this game you're looking at might not be authentic. And that is the #1 thing that people always fail to replicate when they're looking to fake a factory sealed game. Now that seal pattern that I just showed you, you are going to see that on about 90 to 95% of all NES and all Super Nintendo games. Now some exceptions do exist on these consoles, which I will cover in a future video, but for the purpose of you becoming a quick expert, you only need to consider this seal pattern on the games. Original Game Boy games also have very little exception to this rule. I just don't have one here with me for the demo. However, when we talk about N64, Game Boy Color, or Game Boy Advance, there is a lot more exception to this rule. Especially when it comes to N64 and Game Boy Advance, they are a complete mess when it comes to the different types of seam they use on games. And that's why looking for the horizontal or vertical seam pattern is only the first thing I do when I'm trying to look for an authentic game. Let's go to the next thing that you absolutely always have to look for on every factory sealed cardboard video game, which are vent holes. So what is a vent hole? Now vent holes refer to these small uniform circle cuts that are in the actual wrap of the game. You can see that as I go down the face of this Madden 99 game, these small circle holes continue the whole way down in a parallel line. You can see over here, starting with John Madden's head there's another row of perfect circles that goes down the game vertically. Now the shape, size, and placement of these vent holes will vary from game to game. On the Ronaldo game, for instance, you can see that they're actually going across the box in a horizontal pattern. However, you can see it's still a perfect parallel line of uniform shaped circle vent holes. And on the back of the game, you're also going to see this same pattern of vent holes going across the game. And like I said, these vent hole patterns are going to exist on all cardboard North American factory sealed games. So remember in that fake Minish Cap that I just put up on screen, after you look at that H-seam seal and you see that it's perpendicular there and that looks a little bit off, the next thing you have to ask are, okay, are there rows of vent holes on the game? On that Minish Cap example, no, there were no vent holes on the game. So immediately you have one red flag with the perpendicular, and then you have a deciding factor with there are no vent holes. That's 2 huge issues with the game where no one should ever touch it because it's very obviously not factory sealed. But you know what? Let's say they perfected the seal. They created the perfect H-seam seal there. It has the perfect little triangle overlap. The vent holes are present on the front and back. How can we be certain that the game inside is still not an authentic, unopened game? And that's where we have to look at the actual box itself. And this is why I brought some open games with me today. So I'm just gonna go ahead and open this box, and what you're gonna see here on this back line, this is the opening hinge of the box. So as I open it, you can see how badly it's getting creased backwards, right? So when this action happens over and over again, I want you to look at the back of the box here, and you can see how badly it's become whitened from the repetitive motion of me opening this and closing this. Well, not me, but you know what I mean. This type of damage and wear to all cardboard boxes is inevitable. That's what happens when you open a box. It only worsens the more times you open it. Now, if I were to take this side of the box and I showed you this side of the box, what I'm showing you now is the side of the box that has never been opened. And you can see that going across the back hinge line here, it is perfectly black. There's no signs of cracking or any other kind of wear to that hinge. And that is extremely important to look at when we're trying to decide if we're looking at a resale or not. Even if you get the whole factory seam process perfect, inside you would still need a 1-to-1 replica box that shows no signs of being opened ever, or you would need an original box inside that has never been opened. So not only do you have to perfectly replicate your seal pattern, you also have to perfectly replicate an unopened box. I just want to show you guys the hinge cracking on Balloon Fight as well, as it's a little bit less obvious than Chrono Trigger, but you can see that it still blatantly shows that this item has been opened and the paint is cracked all along the opening hinge. And just like this big flap right here, these two little side ones are also going to create the same kind of paint cracking patterns. I'm just going to bring up the Minish Cap one more time on screen here and show you that despite what I see, I can immediately point this out as a reseal only by looking at the box itself. If we just zoom in here on the Minish Cap, right? If you look at the top here where the opening hinge is, you can see a crack line right here where the small tab would flex outwards. This alone tells me that someone took this box, tried to replicate a factory seal, and honestly didn't do a bad job. This is a pretty good fake factory seal. But you can see they still used an opened real box inside, which gives itself away immediately. And that's why I said at the start of this video, having this knowledge will help you identify using pictures about 90% of games across these consoles. But if you have the item in hand, you should have a 98% chance now of knowing if that game is authentic or resale. Like I said, I will make more videos in the future going over more specific nuanced seal patterns that you're going to see across these consoles. N64 and Game Boy Advance really are the two worst, where you're going to see so many different seal patterns. But so long as you remember the other steps I showed you guys, vent holes as well as looking at opening hinges, you should be able to be pretty damn confident if you're looking at an authentic factory sealed game or not. I'll try to cover other consoles as well in the future. This right here is my pure area of expertise, so I'll see what I can do. If this helps you out at all, make sure to hit the like button so I know to keep making more content like this, and I'll see you guys next time.